What's up, movie crew? Welcome to the latest ranking video. Today, in honor of Fast 10 hitting theaters, or I should say with Fast 10 racing to theaters, I thought I would give my own personal ranking of the Fast and Furious movies. Keep in mind, if you are watching this after the release of Fast 10, I am recording this video before the release of Fast 10, so Fast 10 is not in this ranking video. I also do not have Better Luck Tomorrow in here because it's been a little while since I've seen it and I need to rewatch it. So this will be the main 9 movies so far, plus the spinoff Hobbs and Shaw. So, without further ado, let's get started. Coming in last place is the most recent theatrical release, F9 The Fast Saga. Alright. I don't know how else to put it, but the movie sucks. Simple as that. If you like the movie, that's fine, cool. Everyone's got their opinion. Me personally, I did not like this movie. To me, John Cena is not a believable sibling to Mia and Dom. After all the jokes of, well, first they fought a tank, then they were in a skyscraper, what's next, they're going to go to space, and they went to space in this one, and yet again, it doesn't make sense. I did like that for the first time since Fast and Furious 7, we do get some of the characters from Tokyo Drift. But again, some of the stuff that we get in here is just stupid. I don't know any other way to put it. At number 9, we've got Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. Alright, this one's pretty low on the list because this is going to sound stupid for the Fast and Furious franchise, but this one's got the most plot holes out of everything, and that is considering we got a trilogy of movies that predate a movie that was made in 2006. This one has the worst plot hole out of those, and I stand behind that. Alright. So, when Jason Statham's character of Deckard Shaw was introduced, he's the villain in Furious 7. He's the brother of Luke Evans' character that was in Fast and Furious 6. Now, all of a sudden, he's one of the good guys. He's a likable person. The Rock, who's been a hard-ass, no-nonsense character throughout all of it, is now suddenly the funny, charming, likable guy. What? I don't know which video is coming out first, so if this one, long story short, it's almost like Jason Statham's character is Daffy Duck, and The Rock's character is Bugs Bunny throughout this whole thing. Idris Elba did his thing, but at the same time, this movie is practically, almost borderline, into the sci-fi stuff was what they did with Idris Elba's character. Luke Evans' character isn't even mentioned the first time. So now we know that Deckard Shaw has a sister, but suddenly his brother that he killed Han over is not mentioned at all. To me, I thought that was a little weird. At number 8, and it's kind of weird because when this came out, a lot of people like myself did not like this movie, and now this movie's kind of got a little bit of a cult following, so I know this one's gonna ruffle a couple of feathers. But at number 8 for me is Tokyo Drift. One of the reasons I don't like it is I enjoyed the chemistry that we got between Paul Walker and Vin Diesel in the first movie, and to me, at least, seeing Brian O'Connor's story in Too Fast, Too Furious kind of made sense. This one, I will give credit where credit's due. It's got some of the best racing scenes. If you hadn't seen Better Luck Tomorrow, this is the introduction of Han's character. But beyond that, that's about it. That's all I've really got on this one. I don't think the story's that great. The acting, yes, I know I'm saying something about the acting in Fast and Furious movies. All these people are making money to be on screen for millions of dollars. They have to have some sort of talent. But the acting in this movie's kind of not all that great compared to the other ones, given what I just said too. We do see the main character from this one show up again in Furious 7, and then the main characters we see again in F9. That's all I got. At number 7, and once again, this one's definitely a little bit of a hot take, but we got Fast 5. So this is the first major movie where we end up in the Fast and Furious franchise where we go from racing to a heist film. We get all the characters from the previous movies, excluding Tokyo Drift, and we get the introduction of The Rock's character Hobbs. So it was cool seeing The Rock play a different character, because I feel like he plays the same character in every movie, and in this one he's more of the antagonist. Instead of being the likable, charming guy, he's a bit of a hard-ass, no-nonsense person. But overall, I found this movie to be boring. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people like this movie. I know a lot of people have fun with this movie. I was bored. I don't know what else to say. Like, the storyline's not bad. The action scenes are not bad. But for me, the movie just exists. And this is also the first movie in the franchise where we now get a director's cut and the regular cut. And I gotta be honest with everyone, the director's cut on most of these movies, there's not much of a difference. At number 6, we've got The Fate of the Furious. I have to be honest with everyone. I know that this one's also a hot take because I know a lot of people did not like this movie and a lot of people think it's a stupid movie. I agree with you. It is very much a stupid movie. But the action scenes in this are pretty good. One of the plots on Dominic Toretto going rogue against the family, when you go back to it, it actually makes sense. So, the storyline makes sense. We get a little bit of a progression in the story. And also, shout out to them for being able to make a movie where they had to follow up the highest grossing Fast and Furious movie, one of the most well-received ones, and this is the first one that doesn't include, well, this is the first one made since the passing of Paul Walker. They managed to do a little quick thing in here so people know that, yes, Brian's still alive. But personally, the action scenes in this, I enjoy. It's got some of the best action scenes out of the franchise, but again, the movie is stupid. And where all of these have started including the director's cut, you don't need to watch that one. Just saying that now. Alright, we have entered the top 5 of the Fast and Furious franchise. Yeah, that's a lot of movies. But at number 5, I've got Fast and Furious 6. So I know a lot of people prefer 5 over this one. I actually prefer this one. Like, you get everyone. You get a couple of loose threads that have happened over the previous movies kind of tied up because now we're going to get to a movie that takes place after the events of Tokyo Drift. Finally, they got up in the present day. So there's some really good stuff in here. It's got a decent story. It's got why everyone is working together, even though some of the people in here don't necessarily get along with one another. And it's got a decent villain. So, personally, it's a good action movie. And it's one of the ones where you don't necessarily need to see the previous ones. I would recommend, as much as I don't like Fast 5, I would recommend at least watching that one before you watch this. But if you're just flipping through channels one day and Fast and Furious 6 is on, it's a good action movie worth watching. At number 4, we've got Too Fast, Too Furious. Alright, now I know a lot of people did not like this movie when it first came out because it did not include Vin Diesel. At the time, Vin Diesel had went to make Triple X. So we get a movie that shows Brian O'Connor's character after the events of The Fast and the Furious. And there is also a special feature on here that's a short film showing why Brian O'Connor is now in a different area, his connections to this area, who Tyrese's character is in relation to Paul Walker's character. Honestly, I enjoyed it. You've got Brian O'Connor doing his thing, trying to be a cop again. You've got why him and Roman, played by Tyrese, why they are on the outs. You've got why Vin Diesel's character of Dominic Toretto is not in the movie, and you still get some good street racing. Personally, this movie is one of the more underrated movies in the franchise, in my opinion. And I also like the fact it was directed by John Singleton, director of Boys in the Hood. At number 3, and yet again, I feel like I've got a lot of hot takes with the Fast and Furious franchise, but I still stand behind what I'm putting at number 3, and that is Fast and Furious. This one is the 4th movie. So this one sort of takes place before Tokyo Drift and sort of takes place after Tokyo Drift. So at the end of Tokyo Drift, you find out that Dominic Toretto went to Japan after finding out about Han's death. This movie, part of it takes place before Tokyo Drift. So you see that Dom and Han are indeed friends. You've got everyone, a lot of the main characters from 1 and 2 coming together, and Han from Tokyo Drift. He's the only one that you see from Tokyo Drift in this movie. You get a little bit of what everyone's been up to, but you also get a reason why everyone has to get back on the same page again. And personally, one of the other things I really enjoyed about this one is one of the things I like about the first movie, and that is that Paul Walker and Vin Diesel have such good on-screen chemistry together. So seeing these two together again on screen, for me at least, was great. And I've also got to say, I am a little bit nostalgic towards this movie because when the Fast and Furious franchise started, I was like 12 or 13, so it wasn't like I could go to the movies and just buy a ticket and go in because 1, I didn't have a car, and 2, the closest movie theater was 35 minutes away from where I lived, and my parents aren't exactly movie people, so this was the first one I actually got to go see in theaters. But to anyone that's rewatching the Fast and Furious movies, this one, along with 2, I think get a little too much hate. Alright, between the top 2, this was a difficult choice. I think most people will agree with me on these 2 being 2 of the better movies in the franchise. but it was still a difficult choice on which one to put at number 1 and which one to put at number 2. But for the sake of this one, I did put number 1 in the runner-up spot, and I will get into that a little bit more in detail when I show my number 1. So, I've got the first one in my number 2, the runner-up spot. Again, when this franchise came out, I wasn't old enough to drive. I couldn't go see it in theaters. My parents are not movie people. But you got two people that... It's a car movie, and I'm a guy. What? I feel like those are the basic premise right there. Like, that's all I needed. It's got cars, it's got racing, it's got action, and I'm a guy. Of course I want to see this movie. And when it finally hit, well, at the time, I guess it was VHS, because I don't think this... Yeah, I didn't have a DVD player when this one first came out. So this is the only movie from the Fast and Furious franchise that I ever owned on VHS. No, I don't own the VHS tape anymore. And I loved the movie. I rewatched it like 2 or 3 times the first time I saw it. First we rented it. And then I was like, oh, no, I want to buy it because I watched it that many times. I enjoyed it. It's probably still the movie I've seen the most out of them. And it's got everything I wanted. It had cars. It had racing. It had a good blend of rock and hip-hop for the soundtrack. It made me want to see Vin Diesel in more leading roles. I definitely watched more stuff with Paul Walker because while Vin Diesel was doing more action movies, I think this was what made me see Joyride afterwards with Paul Walker, which is more of a thriller. So this movie made me check out stuff from other actors in the movie, and it's a good movie. Also, it is short, so I like that. And one of the things I didn't realize, one of the writers for this is David Ayer. Alright, this one was a difficult one. I had to decide which one I was putting at number 2 and which one I was putting at number 1. And number 1, I went with Furious 7. And the reason I went with Furious 7 is because it has a lot of everything in it. It still has some of the racing stuff that you get in the early movies. It has the heist stuff the later films have been known for. And director James Wan, who's one of my favorite directors of this generation. He made Saw. He's the person behind the Conjuring movies. He did Aquaman for DC. He helped with the Insidious franchise. I could go on and on. But he was given an impossible task. During the making of this movie, Paul Walker passed away in a car accident. So now he has to write off a character, but has to be careful about how to write off the character given that the actor died in a car crash. And I think that the ending for this alone is probably why I'm putting this at number 1. They were able to retire the Brian O'Connor character with a very good farewell scene. They have it so that he's still in the universe. Like with Fate of the Furious, he's mentioned like we should call Brian and Mia. And F9, they have a plot that would require them to bring back Mia without necessarily need to bring back Brian. And there is a little scene that shows Brian's Nissan pulling up at Dom's house. So they've managed to do a little bit of keeping the character around without necessarily like showing any shameful things towards Paul Walker's death. And again, this movie has some really good action scenes. It's got some good racing and the little bit of racing we do get. And overall, this was just a very enjoyable movie. And to anyone that's been a fan of the franchise since the beginning, you're going to get a little emotional at the end. But I've got to say, Furious 7 and the original Fast and Furious movie are my two favorites, but this one edges out number one with that end. And that is my ranking for the Fast and Furious franchise. Now, I know me personally, mine was filled with some hot takes. So, I'm expecting some people to disagree with me on my ranking. So in the comments down below, let me know your ranking. And if you've seen the movie Better Luck Tomorrow, which is Justin Lin's directorial debut that has the introduction of the Han character, where would you put it at in the franchise? And if you were seeing this particular video after seeing Fast 10, where would you rank Fast 10 in the franchise? But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you all for watching and tune in next time.